Hey everybody, my name is Ed. Okay, today we're going to have a look at A Contract with God by Will Eisner. Will Eisner is one of the seminal figures in the comics industry. He started during the Golden Age and influenced generations of comics artists from Jim Steranko to Frank Miller to Chris Ware. He helped develop the language of comic storytelling. He was instrumental in expanding the comics form, instrumental in expanding comics both in format and in content. Will Eisner is probably best known for creating the Spirit. The Spirit is kind of like this two-fisted, hard-boiled, film noir-ish detective type superhero. The story that I read was that originally he went to like the newspaper syndicate and said, "Hey, yeah, I have this idea for this character. He's going to be this detective," and so on and so forth. And the people at the syndicate told him, "Well, you know what? We really want a superhero." So then he took the sketch he had, put a domino mask on him, and said, "He's a superhero." So after the war, Will Eisner took his career in kind of a different direction. He really wasn't that focused on doing new Spirit stories. He didn't really like distance himself from the character too much. I mean, he would still do illustrations, covers for reprints, and things like that. But he did more, commercial work, instructional work, educational type things. And yeah, like I said, but when people asked him to do Spirit things, he wouldn't do a story, but he would do a cover, he would do an illustration. Dennis Kitchen put out the Spirit magazine, started doing reprints, I think, in the 60s. So the Spirit magazines basically got reprints of the old Spirit stories, and then they have articles about comic strips, and there'd be interviews with different comic book creators and a lot of times artists and things like that. They did the Spirit reprint comics in the 80s that were like comics, and it was just basically, like I said, the comics started out in color, but excuse me, but then it went to black and white. Will Eisner did a few books talking about the art of comic books and comic strips. He called it sequential art, and the idea of, again, how do you put these words and these pictures together to convey an idea, and you put them in this image, and that tells a story. Kind of breaking all that sort of thing down and whatnot. So. And really, there's kind of like a trilogy. There's a Contract with God, then there's A Life Force, and then there's Droopsy Avenue, or Dropsy Avenue. And all these stories are about this sort of tenement area that Will Eisner grew up in, and they, like I said, kind of form a trilogy of stories based on his life experiences and things like that. Eisner thought that comics could be a legitimate art form, and partially inspired by the underground comics movie of the 60s and 70s, he felt that comics could be used to tell stories that were more mature, more literary than had been in the past. When he shopped around Contract with God to book publishers, he called it a graphic novel in order to distinguish it from what people normally thought of as comics. Technically, it isn't a novel, it's a collection of short stories, but at that time, the term comic book still kind of had sort of a stigma to it, and he didn't want it to be sold in only comic shops. He was trying to get it into mainstream bookstores. Now, the thing that I have in my hand, this physical, tangible thing here, this is like the umpteenth printing or whatever. This is from W.W. Norton Company. Yeah, W.W. Norton Company. But it's been through like several printings and publications and stuff. I think at one point DC put it out. The original version, of course, came out in 1978-ish. And this one here is from like 2006. It's got several different, they include several different prefaces and intros and forewords. So that's interesting, and they leave them pretty much intact, which I like. Preface to the 2000 edition. Here's notes from 1989. Notes from 1995. Okay. The original publisher was Barnett Books. I did have to look it up, but it's Barnett Books. Basically, Contract with God is 4 short stories loosely inspired by Eisner's memories of growing up in a tenement in the Bronx during the 30s. The first story is about a man who has a crisis of faith after his daughter dies. The second one is about a street singer. The third is about an awful landlord. And the last is about various people who from the tenement who spend the summer at a cooking, kind of like this bread and breakfast type thing, I guess. Now, personally, I feel that the actual script is interesting, but it's slightly flawed. In some places, it's really powerful and moving, in others, it's hammy and overwrought. My least favorite story is The Super. I think Eisner wanted to present us with a portrait of a man who was a terrible person, yet at the same time have the audience feel some sympathy for him. But the problem is that the character as written is really thin. He doesn't feel like a three-dimensional character, and he barely works as a caricature. The street singer is marred by an odd scene that is, I don't know, maybe it's just weird to me reading it in a 21st century when we're really sensitive to certain types of topics. But there's a scene involving domestic violence, and it's hurt in the manner that it's drawn. It's like you're almost not sure if it's supposed to be funny or if it's supposed to be tragic. I was really moved by the title story. It's kind of histrionic, and I don't totally buy the kind of O. Henry-ish ending, but I did find it touching. My favorite story is the last one. I really did enjoy the interactions of all the various characters and kind of seeing through their dialogue, their ambitions, and then seeing them kind of fall short of those. Just to give you a few examples of what I was talking about as far as the kind of over-the-top writing, like in the first story, you had stuff like this. Only the tears of 10,000 weeping angels could cause such a deluge, and come to think of it, maybe that's exactly what it is. After all, this is the day that Framey Hirsch buried Rachel, his daughter, It's just, it's a little purple, you know what I mean? And as far as the story about the street singer, here. So without giving too much away, we've kind of got, we've got this scene here with this guy. He's an alcoholic, and he gets into a fight with his wife, and he throws the baby across the room? Okay. And they get into a fight here, and it's shut up. You're a bum. And then here's their fight. And I don't know, man. It's a little bit like something out of like the Three Stooges or something. You know what I mean? It just it's just kind of weird. You know what I mean? Okay. Oh, the art is very interesting. It's stark black and white with lots of fine, or I guess thin line work. Will Eisner said he was particularly inspired by the woodcuts of Lynn Ward, who I had to look up. His style is, I guess, semi-cartoony, but is still able to evoke serious emotion, especially in the first story. Will Eisner doesn't draw perfect-looking people. They're exaggerations of lumpen folks. At the same time, it's done with love and affection. You never feel that you're supposed to be laughing at the way that they look. Just to give you some examples of the art, like I said, some really nice. Yeah, I had this all, believe it or not, I had this all planned, but some really nice black and white work here. You know, lots of little fine, like I said, thin artwork. Really moody and symbolic. Really cool thing here with the door where he's tracked in the rain. And here, just check out how the main character is just sort of lumped over, or leaning forward, slumped over. That's what I wanted to say. And it just really gives you a sense of this guy's sadness. I mean, I think Eisner's work really was great in this first story. And that's just awesome stuff. And again, if you know your comics and your comics artists, you can see how other people who are superstars today are really influenced by him. Here's a little bit I was talking about of drawing just regular looking people. They're kind of funny and humorous, but you don't get this sense that he's mocking anyone. Oh, hey, check this out. Regular looking middle-aged people do in fact have sex. Oh my. Here's something I was talking about. The one story about this super that just doesn't really work for me. Here he is walking around kind of bullying people. And you get something like this. Tenants. Phooey. Okay. Another really nice illustration. Just awesome stuff when it comes to the art for the most part. I mean, like I said, some places I think he hit a bum note. But overall, it's well, I better not show that just because I don't want to be giving too much away. But overall, yeah, really great artwork. Okay, so yeah, Will Eisner's Contract with God, while it has its flaws, it still remains an important work in the history of comics and pretty much a turning point in the development of adult comics and crafting the form of graphic novels. Okay, so that's basically it. Thank you to everybody who watched this video. Everybody have a great day. Thanks.